Verstappen did not demand the FIA investigate Russell's car because Mercedes was fast. He demanded it because the pace looked too clean to ignore, too stable under braking, too strong on traction, too kind on the tires, too repeatable when Red Bull expected the Mercedes to fade. And in Formula 1, repeatable pace is not just speed. It is a warning. Because one fast lap can be luck. One perfect setup can be explained. But when a rival suddenly looks calm everywhere, gains without paying the usual price, and forces Red Bull to ask where the performance is coming from, the whole race becomes suspicious. And here is the part that makes this terrifying. If the FIA finds something illegal, the scandal explodes. But if the FIA finds nothing illegal, Verstappen has an even bigger problem. Because then Russell's pace was not a trick. It was real, legal, repeatable, and possibly the first sign that Mercedes has found a hidden advantage Red Bull still does not understand. Subscribe to the channel. At first, Red Bull had a safe explanation for Russell's pace. Mercedes got the setup right. The tires switched on. Russell drove cleanly. The track gave the car exactly what it needed. That explanation sounds reasonable. It sounds calm. It sounds like the kind of thing a team tells itself when a rival suddenly looks stronger than expected. But Verstappen does not build his career on comfortable explanations. He notices patterns. And the pattern in Russell's pace was the part Red Bull could not ignore. Because this was not just one fast lap. It was not just one clean sector. It was not just one moment where the Mercedes looked sharp. The worrying part was how repeatable it looked. Again and again, the car seemed calm where rivals expected it to move around. Again and again, it appeared strong on traction, stable under braking, and gentle enough on the tires to keep the pace alive. And in Formula 1, repeatability is everything. A fast car can surprise you once. A repeatable car can beat you all season. That is why Verstappen's demand for an FIA investigation carried so much weight. It was not only about frustration. It was about certainty. Because when a driver at the front sees pace that does not match expectation, he needs to know what he is fighting. Is it driver brilliance? Is it a perfect setup? Is it a clever legal solution? Or is it something sitting beyond the line the FIA is supposed to protect? That question changes the whole race. Because Red Bull can accept being beaten by performance they understand. They may hate it, but they can respond. They can adjust the car. They can change strategy. They can bring upgrades. They can ask Verstappen to attack a weakness. But unexplained performance is different. Unexplained performance creates doubt. And doubt is one of the most dangerous forces in a championship fight. It makes engineers rewatch every trace. It makes strategists question every plan. It makes drivers push harder than they wanted to. It makes teams wonder whether their rival has found something hidden in the rulebook that nobody else saw coming. That is why Russell's pace became more than a race result. It became a technical alarm. Because a Mercedes that is simply quick in one place is manageable. A Mercedes that is quick everywhere it needs to be is much harder to attack. If it is fast on the straights but weak in corners, Red Bull knows where to pressure it. If it is strong in qualifying but hard on tires, Verstappen can wait for the race to bring the weakness out. If it is dangerous in clean air but unstable in traffic, strategy can force it into dirty air. But if Russell's car was braking cleanly, exiting corners strongly, protecting tires, and repeating pace across the stint, then the usual doors started closing. That is when a rival becomes scary. Not because it is unbeatable. Because it does not show an obvious wound. And Red Bull is a team built on finding wounds. They study where a rival is weak. They build race plans around pressure. They make opponents defend in the places they least want to defend. They turn small weaknesses into big consequences. But in Austria, Russell's Mercedes may have looked too complete for comfort. That is the first reason Verstappen would demand answers. Because when a car looks complete suddenly, the question is not just how fast it is. The question is why it became complete now. Was Mercedes using the tires differently? Was the suspension keeping the car calmer under load? Was the aerodynamic balance giving Russell confidence through the corner? Was the energy deployment cleaner than Red Bull expected? Was the car gaining speed without paying the normal price in degradation or drag? Those questions are not casual. Those questions decide development direction. And if Red Bull gets the answer wrong, it wastes time. That is why the FIA becomes part of the story. The FIA is not there to judge whether Verstappen feels suspicious. The FIA is there to enforce the rules. They measure. They inspect. They compare the car against the regulation book. They decide whether a team crossed the line, or simply stood closer to it than everyone else dared. And that difference is brutal. Because if Mercedes crossed the line, Red Bull has a clear target. The advantage can be challenged. The FIA can act. The story becomes a scandal. But if Mercedes did not cross the line, if Russell's pace was legal, then Red Bull faces a harder truth. Mercedes has found something real. Something Red Bull must understand, copy, counter, or defeat. And none of those options are easy. That is why the most frightening outcome for Verstappen may not be an illegal finding. It may be no illegal finding at all. Because then the pace remains. The result remains. The threat remains. And the FIA's answer would quietly push the problem back onto Red Bull. Deal with it. That is the coldest message a top team can hear. Because legal speed cannot be removed. It has to be beaten on track. And to beat it, Red Bull first has to understand it. That is where the Austrian data becomes so important. A race result tells the public who finished where. Data tells the teams why. The public sees Russell holding pace. Red Bull sees brake traces, throttle application, minimum speeds, exit speeds, tire temperature behavior, energy deployment, straight line comparison, how early the driver can open the steering, how much the car slides, how stable it remains as fuel burns off and tires age. Those details are the real race. And if Russell's details look too strong in too many places, Verstappen would not see it as coincidence. He would see it as a warning. Because one isolated advantage is explainable. A connected advantage is dangerous. Better braking stability helps the corner entry. Better corner entry protects the front tires. A calmer rear helps Russell pick up throttle earlier. Earlier throttle improves corner exit. Better exit speed strengthens the straight. Less sliding keeps the tires cooler. Cooler tires preserve pace. Preserved pace creates strategy freedom. And strategy freedom creates control. That is a chain. And Formula One championships are often decided by chains. Not one magic part. Not one single trick. A full system where each strength supports the next. If Mercedes found that kind of chain in Austria, then Red Bull's concern makes perfect sense. Because Red Bull knows how powerful a connected car can be. They have used that exact principle to dominate rivals before. They know that once a car gives the driver confidence, everything changes. The driver brakes later, turns with more faith, uses the throttle earlier, makes fewer corrections, hurts the tires less, repeats the lap more easily. And when a driver can repeat pace without fighting the car, the race becomes calmer. Calm is dangerous. A nervous car can be pressured. A calm car can control. That may be what Red Bull saw in Russell's Mercedes. Not just speed. Calm speed. And calm speed is exactly what makes a rival look suspicious. Because it does not look like the driver is hanging on. It looks like the car is giving him margin. Margin under braking. Margin on traction. Margin on tires. Margin in strategy. That is why Verstappen would want the FIA involved. Not because every strong rival must be illegal. That would be too simple. He would want the FIA involved because the boundaries matter. At this level, tiny advantages change everything. A small flexible area. A clever energy use. A suspension behavior that keeps the platform stable. A floor effect that produces grip more efficiently. A cooling or bodywork solution that reduces the usual trade-off. Any one of those can shift a race. And if one of them sits outside the rules, the FIA must stop it. But if one sits inside the rules, Red Bull must learn from it. That is the uncomfortable reality. The investigation can answer legality. It cannot answer performance for Red Bull. That work belongs to the team. And Verstappen knows how expensive that work can be. Because every race spent investigating is a race where Mercedes can score. Every wrong development choice costs wind tunnel time. Every rushed upgrade risks making the car worse. Every strategic overreaction can hurt tire life, balance, or race pace. That is how a rival's suspicious performance creates damage before anything is proven. It forces reaction. And reaction is not control. Red Bull wants to dictate the fight. They want Verstappen pressuring others, not demanding explanations. They want rivals studying their car, not the other way around. But Russell's Austrian pace may have flipped that feeling. For once, the question was aimed at Mercedes. What have they found? And if the FIA could not give Red Bull the answer it wanted, the burden became even heavier. Because then Verstappen's real opponent was not only Russell. It was uncertainty. Uncertainty about the Mercedes car. Uncertainty about the FIA boundary. Uncertainty about whether Austria was a one-off or the first sign of a trend. And trends are what frighten top teams. A one-off can be absorbed. A trend reshapes the season. If Russell is fast once, Red Bull can call it a strong weekend. If Russell is fast again, Red Bull has to call it progress. If Russell is fast a third time, the championship has a new problem. That is why Austria could not be ignored. Because the first sign of a trend always looks like a single race, until it happens again. Verstappen understands that better than most. He knows championships can shift before the public accepts it. He knows a rival advantage must be questioned early. He knows that waiting for proof can cost more than asking hard questions immediately. That is why this was not just about ego. It was about survival. Survival in a development war. Survival in a title fight. Survival against a rival team that may have found a new performance window. And that phrase matters. Performance window. It means the car works in a certain set of conditions. The tires come alive. The balance settles. The energy deployment supports the lap. The driver feels confidence. The car starts giving more than it takes. If Mercedes found a wider performance window, then Russell's pace becomes much more serious. Because a narrow window can disappear when conditions change. A wider window travels. It works on more tracks. In more temperatures. Across more race phases. With more strategic flexibility. That is what Red Bull would fear most. A Mercedes that does not need a perfect weekend anymore. A Mercedes that can repeat its pace under different conditions. A Mercedes that turns Russell into a regular threat, not an occasional one. That is the danger behind the investigation demand. Verstappen was not just asking whether Russell's car was legal. He was asking whether Mercedes had just changed the fight. Because if Mercedes has found a legal performance advantage, then Red Bull needs more than an FIA answer. They need a technical response. They need to understand where the time is coming from. They need to know whether the gain is aerodynamic, mechanical, electrical, or tire-related. They need to know whether it can be copied, blocked, or outdeveloped. They need to know whether their own car has the same potential hidden inside it. And they need to know quickly. Because Formula One does not slow down for confusion. The next race comes. The next qualifying comes. The next tire stint comes. And if the Mercedes still looks calm, the suspicion becomes stronger. That is why every detail after Austria becomes part of the story. Russell's braking. Russell's traction. Russell's tire life. Russell's energy use. The FIA checks. The Red Bull upgrades. Verstappen's radio tone. Mercedes' confidence. All of it becomes connected. That is what happens when a rival's pace feels unexplained. The entire paddock starts reading the race differently. And that is the first block of the drama. Not proof of guilt. Not a confirmed scandal. Not an easy accusation. A demand for answers. Because Verstappen saw pace that Red Bull could not comfortably explain, and in Formula One, the unknown is sometimes more frightening than the illegal. If the FIA finds something wrong, the story explodes. But if the FIA finds nothing wrong, then Red Bull is left with the most terrifying possibility of all. Russell's Mercedes may not have broken the rules. It may have found a way to make the rules work better than anyone else.